So here's exactly why scaling your e-commerce brand may not be the best way for you to make more money. I know this sounds very counterintuitive, but I want to give you examples today, concrete examples of client accounts that, look, scaling necessarily wasn't the best idea for them. Choose your game wisely, and I want to talk about the different games you have to choose from in this video. Now, if you're wondering who am I, my name is Justin, and I'm the founder at pitadvertising.com, an online marketing growth firm helping elevate thriving brands by simplifying e-commerce growth. We actively spend over $9.6 million on paid ads every single year. We've generated over $30 million in client revenue and have worked with almost 80 clients. Now, let me show you a post from Mr. Raymond Johnston that I saw the other day on LinkedIn. All right, I used to be in a mastermind actually with him. He's the partner at Right Hook Digital, and that struck a chord in my opinion or my experience, if you want, because he said this. He said, I think we need to have a serious talk. We've corrupted D2C e-com into thinking scale is better. That is not true. Everyone is pushing for more and more and more. I can prove it with a recent example from my team. We got a jewelry brand who is always pushing us to scale more, sometimes at the cost of profit. But last 30 days, we pushed to pull back spend. Why would we do that? Because we care about this profit. Here's what we did. Cut Google spend by 50%, reduce Meta spend by 15%. Results, lowered total in ad cost by 37% month over month. Only a 13% reduction in their total sales month to date. Highest net profit EBITDA in the last 12 months, lowest new customer CAC year to date. And this was actually the same thing that we faced with a client. So I did meet this client up in Dubai a couple of months ago, and we were talking about scale, right? And he was kind of talking about how he didn't really know if he wanted to scale or profit optimize the brand and had a lot of confusion around that. And we felt that as their agency for the better part of the last 9 or 10 months, I think now at this point. So essentially we started this partnership. The client was like, we want to massively scale. We want to double spend every month. And I was like, are you sure? You've never really done that before, right? That's a very big jump. Can you sustain that? He was like, yes, that's what we want to do. And very rapidly in the first month, he kind of realized that profit tanked if we tried to scale that fast. So he was like, okay, let's maybe scale 20% month over month, which made a lot more sense. Now, we started up scaling and scaling and scaling, and then we kept hitting resistance for various reasons. One of these reasons, actually, if you've watched recently on the channel, perhaps it's about to come out soon, depending on when you're seeing this video. I did a podcast with a certain Spencer Paulo, which he's a CRO and website conversion rate expert. One thing that he always establishes and speaks of is the Shopify health score, which actually is a metric that he coined to see how effective a website is at converting customers, which essentially is quite easy. You do conversion rate times your AOV. So let's say your conversion rate is 4%, AOV is $100. You do 4 times 100, which actually gives you a Shopify health score of 400 in this case. So that said, every brand should be optimizing to have a north of 250 score. So now let me give you an example of this client's health score. Now, this client is selling both in the US and in the Australian market. Now, we always had an easier time scaling in the Australian market, although the client always kind of wanted to push more in the US market because it had more opportunities, bigger market, yada, yada. Okay, take a look at that. $58 AOV over the last 12 months. So $58 AOV times 2% as a conversion rate. So 58.87 times 2.08% conversion rate. We have a 122 Shopify health score. Now, what Spencer said essentially in our podcast, he was like, look, if you're at 100 to 200 as a Shopify health score, it probably means you've got a decent fit for your product, but there's a lot of optimizations needed to be done. It's your 0 to 1 now is done. From here, you need to optimize your store, which I'm saying that to give you context because I'll show you a Miro board I've built in the next couple of minutes. Okay. Now, actually, let me show you the Australian market for that client. Now, would you look at that? AOV is much higher, and so is store conversion rate. So we have a 4.59 times 78.75, which in that case gives you a 361 Shopify health score, which tells us markets are responding differently. Our Australian market is a much better market to scale versus our US market. And we've continuously had issues with US market-based advertising for that client, which makes sense. Was it really the ads? Was it really the website? Where was the problem? Where right now we can kind of see, hey, website wasn't really optimized for that brand in the US market. Now, going back to Triple Wall, what I shared earlier, this is our month of February, where we spent about $30,000 on ads, made $107,000 back in sales, 29% MER, $18,900 in net profit, which now the client was like, well, look, let's just do a test, right? We had a talk with the client. We're like, let's do a test. Can we get revenue down to $80,000 to $90,000? So get somewhere within that range, but have the same profit. Can we like drop revenue, which for them actually meant less headaches, right? There's less orders to ship. There's less like volume in the back end, which just meant somewhat of a healthier brand. Can we reduce revenue, but keep the same amount of profit? So then what we did, if I show you now the month of March, all right, loading this up right now, we did at a $3,000 in revenue. So we did roughly $25,000 less in revenue. We dropped ad spend, as you can see, from about 30 grand now to 18,000. MER essentially is much healthier. We went from 29% to 21% MER for a total of $19,000 in net profit. So about $200 to $300 more in net profit for $25,000 less in revenue, which shows you like there's a point of equilibrium that every brand kind of hits at some point, a point of resistance if you want, where you have to make a decision as to whether or not you want to push past this point. There is no right or wrong answer. And I think that's just kind of the lesson I got from Raymond right here, because Raymond also always talks about how, you know, he's been scaling brands, how, you know, they're growing businesses, but he's like, hey, it might not always be the answer based on what your goals are. So I made this chart right here that I wanted to show you, right? Which I call the scale fallacy right here. Okay. So every brand kind of thinks scaling is the answer to all the problems, but it's not. Because first of all, if you scale a brand or a bucket, right? I want you to imagine your brand as a bucket. It's like if you have a bucket with holes and you put more pressure, right? A higher pressure stream of water in that bucket, well, the holes are just going to leak at a higher volume. That's all that's going to happen. Because then, first of all, before you got to scale, you have to know your unit economics, which I kind of put right here, the sheet that we have internally, right? Where we would ask like a brand that wants to seriously scale, they need to know all of their numbers to the T. And I'm telling you, 80% of brands don't. Seriously. So many brands come on and they're like, well, I break even at like 3. Where did you get that number? Well, I just noted like, look, if I get a 3x ROAS at the end of the month, like if I look at my P&L, it's going to look healthy. Okay, but there's no security in that number, right? It's good so as long as you're at low scale, but if you start putting more budget, right, more spend, you know your ROAS is going to go down. Like, do you know how far you can have it go down? Do you know where your ultimate like quote unquote stop loss is? Yes and no, right? What is your true break even? A lot of brands don't know. So scaling starts with knowing your unit economics. Then from there, you establish a CAC and or blended ROAS target, right? Which will dynamically change as you increase ad spend if you have an agency, right? Because the more spend you push through the funnel, the lower portion of that ad spend your agency's fee is technically going to be, which if you look at that right here, an agency as an example is charging you a $2,000 retainer royal. If you can see here that with increasing ad spend and maintaining margins, right? So this brand, hypothetically speaking, I just did a quick screenshot of like this profit auditing tool we have. So if there are blended ROAS with cost of goods only, so if they ran ads internally, it would be a 1.43. Now, if they're running ads with an agency, you have to add to these COGS the agency fee, right? Well, if they're only spending 5K a month on ads, that's a 2x ROAS to have as a break even. And then if they're spending 10K, then it's a 1.7. If they're spending 500K, it's like a 1.4345, blah, 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 which basically is almost close to if they ran it internally because it's such a small portion of the ad spend being pushed through that funnel. So, right, this, a lot of people also forget that it's not fixed through time. The more spend you have, usually the lower your target is, which you have to understand that. And that's also like here, one thing I'm not like really counting on, but that I think to make this model even more accurate, I should go back here and do this again as I scale. Because then the more orders I have, right, the more spend I have, the more orders I get on my store. The more orders I get on my store, usually the lower my costs can be because I can then negotiate, right? I can order in bulk from my supplier, which then gives me leverage to negotiate for better costs, right? I will also ship out more orders, which allows me to negotiate with my shipping company to have a lower cost per unit, which actually increases my margins, which therefore means that it lowers my target. So all that to say, a lot of people tend to forget that this changes dynamically at scale. And then most people will say, well, scale as long as you're within KPI, right? Hey, so as long as you're below or above this threshold, just scale, right? Keep on scaling. But the reality is things break at scale. And now the most common problems that do occur at scale are the following 3. You're either going to have inventory or logistical issues, right? So like shipping issues start happening at scale, or then you cannot like pick and pack orders as quicker as you used to be, right? You start having delays in shipping because you don't have enough staff. Or then again, you cannot order inventory fast enough from your supplier. So that tends to happen quite a lot. Operational issues also tend to happen a lot, right? Financial management, you have a lot more orders coming through. Can your financial team actually update your books and your reporting dashboards fast enough to maintain, right, this kind of quality or clarity in your books? Yes or no? A lot of the time the answer is no, right? A lot of the time these people have like, I've worked with many brand owners that have a simple VA that does their books books, which works great up until you're pushing like thousands of orders a day, where now at this point, it's like how many, like that VA that you're paying 2 hours a day to do your books cannot realistically process 1,000 orders a day and update your books in real time, which causes delay in your books, which causes delay in you knowing whether or not you're profitable for the day. So that's a lot, right? It's a lot to maintain. Talent acquisition, customer service issues. The one that we face the most as an agency, it's a need for a broader positioning, right? Because then you could have somewhat of a narrow market desire, advertising to like solution aware or product aware audiences. But then the more you scale up ad spend, like the more you saturate these audiences, there's less and less solution aware people or product aware people that haven't seen your ads yet. So you have to go up a level in awareness. You have to make your way up to problem aware and unaware ads, which might be a new territory for your ad account, which means you haven't yet cracked ads at that level. So that also usually causes you to take a hit. It's like you're moving towards a lesser aware market, which means ads either drop a little bit in profitability or it takes some time at least for you to figure out this new positioning. So then ultimately, most of these issues means this: CAC goes up, right? It starts costing you a little bit more to acquire customers. Profits go down. Headaches also increase, right? There's like a lot more on your plate on a day-to-day basis to manage. So now you have a choice to make, right? Either to fix these issues and keep on scaling, which you definitely could, right? You have to fix some of these issues and then you can start scaling again. Or you profit optimize and maintain, which I think this is where most people get stuck, playing a game they don't want to play. They think they want to scale, but their actions aren't congruent. There's a mismatch between what they want and what they do, right? I hear that so commonly with like brand owners, which are like, we want to scale. And then all the pressure is on the ad agency to making that scale happen. But then I'm like, okay, look, let's take a step back. Assuming I can do 10x the volume that you're currently doing right now, can you order 10x the amount of inventory you have from your supplier and get it within the next 2 weeks? Well, no, we can't. Okay, so that's issue number one. Now, how many VAs or what is your customer support team looking like? Well, we have like one VA part-time doing 2 hours a day. So what if you get 10x more customer service issues? Can you process those? Well, probably not. Like I'd have to take like a week or two to start hiring people, and then probably like within a month I'd be able to fix that. Okay, so then you can't scale 10x tomorrow morning. Well, seen like that, I guess I can, right? So that's usually what goes wrong, is a lot of people don't foresee these things happening at scale. And e-commerce growth, in my opinion, really comes down to knowing the game that you're playing. There's various ways to grow a brand, right? Various ways to crush it in this space. You can be like, going back to what you have right here, you can be a very profitable brand and maintain. But when I say maintain, it's like to maintain revenue, by the way, you still need to increase your level of inputs, the inputs into your brand, meaning you output stuff into the brand, which becomes an input for the brand. Anyways, long story short, what I'm trying to tell you is like maintaining is the space is usually not as easy as like keeping the same ads, you know, keeping the same store theme and keeping the same like organic schedule. You have to innovate. You have to create, because your competitors are, and if they want to grow, usually they're going to bury you. So like even to maintain, it takes effort, which I want to make clear in this video. Now, what scaling actually looks like is something like this, right? Scaling isn't just like a hockey stick curve, right? Or just like a linear curve. No, scaling looks like this. You have a slide, like you increase a little bit, and then you plateau. Always what ends up happening. You have growth, then you plateau. And then what I like about this graph, it kind of shows you, right, it growth through time, and it shows you the potential for a negative curve. This plateau is where a lot of brands just end up dying out, right? This is like the make or break for brands. It's you're either going to come out of that plateau stronger or weaker. It's one or the other. And you only have the power to choose what you want to do from there, right? And this is where a decision needs to be made, right? And that's the indecision to either profit optimize and maintain, or to fix issues and keep on scaling, is what causes this down like stream curve that you can see right here, okay? People not deciding which route they want to go causes that. Because you could argue that even to profit optimize and maintain, as I said earlier, requires a different set of inputs and outputs, which causes growth to an extent, right? Because to maintain, you have to grow. And I hope this analogy is clear to you in that sense. So now I want to talk about slew rate, okay? Which for those of you who are familiar perhaps with like how audio technology works, you might already know what this means. But slew rate is the rate of how quickly an amplifier can respond to a rapid change of input level, which looks a little like this, okay? So basically input increases. Now for the output to match, well, it's measured by an increase in volts through time, okay? Usually I think it's like milliseconds or microseconds. Forgot the actual unit of time used, but anyways, that's besides the point. It's an increase again in output through a certain specific time frame, okay? Now, why am I bringing this up? To go back right here, let me just go back to this graph, okay? Whenever you have growth, which in this case, let's just like define input level as an increase in sales, okay? The market is responding in favor of your current marketing or growth efforts, okay? They're responding favorably by giving you like more inputs. they're buying more, there's more people coming to your store, and then you have to kind of adapt to the rate at which the inputs are increasing. Meaning, typically, as you grow a business, if you start getting more clients and more sales, you have to respond at that rate in the back end, meaning you have to adapt like your customer service team, and you have to have them grow at the same rate as your customer support like request increases. Same thing with inventory. You get more sales in the front end. Well, can you have somebody in the back end take care of planning inventory to accommodate for this increase in inputs from the market? That's always the way that it works. And what I like about this graph, and the reason I picked slew rates to demonstrate my point, is it's the volume of output you do, yes, but through time. Through time is the most important variable here, because look, if you manage to adapt and to finally fix all these issues around your brand, but you do so within like 6 months or a year, it might be too late. Like, you'll go back down, right? By that point, you're probably already back down, and then it's harder for you to go back up the curve, right? So again, it's all about the game you want to play. If you want to keep growing, then you have to change your back end as fast as the front end growth is happening. And you either have to have the mental/physical capacity to do so as a brand owner, which means you need to have like time in your day to change all of these things. But a lot of the time we don't, right? As business owners, a lot of the time we think we can take on so many things, but then at some point we hit our personal breaking points. We're like, shit, my business now demands a lot more than what I can output. What do I do? And that's what causes a plateau a lot of the time, okay? It's like you just cannot, like, you can survive, you can stay your head above the water, you can do a little bit of outputs, but like not enough for you to keep up with growth. So going back to my example, essentially from like today and kind of this post that I saw from Raymond, it's yes, growth isn't necessarily always the answer, especially fast growth. You have, like, if you want fast growth, well, you'll need to do fast inputs or fast outputs in the back end, right? Cool. You want fast, like, you want to grow your ad spend, you want to increase your sales coming from ads. Great. Do you have the time and the bandwidth to put that same amount of effort in the back end? Do you have the team that it takes to help you support that? If not, then don't. And perhaps you will hit an equilibrium, which a lot of brands do hit. Like, you know, Raymond's talked about right here, like the example I showed you earlier, which every brand kind of has that point where more growth, like 25K, 30K more in monthly revenue, doesn't necessarily equal 20, 30K more in net profit. It might not, right? Why? Not because it's impossible, because you haven't optimized your brand to accommodate for that. If you find yourself in that situation where you keep making more revenue, but then the profit doesn't follow, it's like, man, where's all this revenue going, right? It's all going back to expenses. Well, you have to understand that something in the back is probably broken, and you or your team has to do more output to accommodate again for this increase in inputs. You've gotten more revenue, we're not getting the same amount of profit, and great, you have to output more, you have to fix more things in the back of your brand, okay? And that is if you want to fix stuff and keep on scaling, because if you don't, cool, don't fix it, but play this game and know that you are playing this game, okay? Don't try and beat yourself up and keep wanting to scale. If you're not willing to fix these things, fix them, then scale. So if you made it this far, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Now, if you do want to work with a Meta, TikTok, and or Google paid ads partner, click the button down below and book in a call to speak with our team at paidadvertising.com today. If you actually want us to consult your ad accounts and help you scale while you do it yourself, then we also have our mentorship and consultation program called Ad Engine, link below. Now, for more free content, check out what's posted on the YouTube channel, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. Peace.